coming over the Bering Strait right here. And you can see the distances involved coming to Greenland. So over the Bering Strait and all the way around to Greenland is quite a journey to make in only 100 years of migration. Pretty impressive. And some of the things that aided that, kayaks, these very long kayaks they made, covered with skins, with seal skins. And also dog sleds, been around for over 8,000 years. And this is another one, George Adam Agapooks or Twaks. Beautiful, beautiful drawings. My grandpa was a wonderful artist. My mom and brother as well. They're with the Lord, but they're wonderful artists. And my grandpa used to make these wonderful drawings of Yosemite, and I just love that tonality, these pencil drawings. Now, a lot of these are done on paper, some walrus skin and some caribou hide. So utilizing what they have available there. Here he is. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful portrait of him. Here he is in his workshop. And these are some really telling drawings of the communities there. You know, very simple, very heartfelt. A lot of his images are just of the communities and the interaction within that community. I think they're really somehow just very humble, both in the tonality and their content. These, I think, are really interesting as well. So displaying, of course, local culture. And here, we're going to see this in the next slide. This is the blanket toss here, celebrating a successful whale hunt. And these are just really little joyous depictions of it. And here it is, right here. So if they've had a successful hunt very far north of the Bering Strait, Bering Sea, they'll have a festival there, pay homage to the whale, show them their respect. They'll have a spiritual ceremony honoring the whale. So again, they take it very seriously and with a lot of deep respect for the animal. And this to celebrate, they'll have this blanket toss there where they toss people into the air. I think they should make that a shore excursion. Be a good one. Here's a bowhead whale. Now the bowhead whale, I'm just going to swing a quick drink of water here. But bowhead whale, let's talk a little bit about the importance there in northern Alaska. Pardon me. Thank you. Now these are huge, about 220,000 pounds, and continually feeding. Even feed with their, swim with their mouths open, so they're continually feeding. That's kind of my approach to the buffet as well, by the way. Just, please stay out of my way if you see me up there, because it can be hazardous. So we're talking about the cultures up here in the very far north of Alaska, north of the Bering Strait and Bering Sea. Now I want to read this really quickly. I don't normally read things off the prompter, but this I want to read because I think this is very, very heartfelt and very telling. So this is a petition by one of the community elders to the International Whaling Commission asking for permission to hunt up there. And again, we want to protect the whales, of course, but you know, to import cattle or chicken or something from the United States, completely impractical. Practical, the cost would be just astronomical. And of course, to grow fruit or vegetables up there, pretty much impossible as well. So, just as a subsistence method, there really are no other sources for food. Therefore, they were granted permission to hunt up there a certain number per year. I don't want to read just these parts because it's very telling of the culture there. This gentleman says, our need for the bowhead whale is communal. The bowhead whale plays a very significant role in sharing networks that bind us together as families, communities, and as a people. Our whaling captains and crews share the bowhead with all of us, whether we live within their village, in neighboring communities, or in other more remote areas of the state. They're a really important life lesson. They're sharing within the entire community rather than just within their own. Today, as our world changes with lightning speed, the whale, the harvest, and the sharing are the constraints that sustain our bodies and our spirits, that bind our families and communities together, that define our social and leadership roles, that keep our children in school, that allow our elders to pass their knowledge to our youth, and that teach us patience, perseverance, interdependence, and generosity. They strengthen our subsistence community across Alaska. They provide wisdom and insight. They give us hope. The whale and the harvest are our way of life, our cultural identity, and a means for survival. The spirit of the whale, with capitals, provides now, as it has throughout history, for our people and lives within each of us. I found that a very moving statement and really telling again about the respect for the whale and for wildlife and their atmosphere, their environment as a whole. So this is a bowhead whale harvest. There's been a successful harvest. They'll have a feast that they share with the entire community. It's a little like our buffet. The blessing ceremony, so again, they pay homage to the whale. They have a blessing ceremony before the feast. And let's talk a little bit about the background as it was melded into the United States. So 1867, Secretary of State William H. Seward negotiated the purchase of Alaska from the Russian Empire for $7.2 million. That's 2 cents an acre. Pretty good deal. 1935, this is an interesting case. Tlingit and Haida tribes challenged the federal government's right to the land. Tlingit and Haida Indians of Alaska versus the United States. Court finds that Alaska Natives did indeed have claim to this land and that the deal didn't trump their rights. So this was settled in 1967 for $7.5 million. January 3rd, 1959, Eisenhower signs the official proclamation admitting Alaska into the United States. Another thing we're going to encounter a lot is the Klondike Gold Rush. You'll see this a lot in Skagway. There are little huts here, some remodeled buildings you'll encounter. And this was also the starting point for the Chilkoot Trail, which went over the mountain passes there into the Yukon region of Canada, which was a harrowing journey in the dead of winter. And people who went over also had to prove to the Canadian Mounted Police on the other side that they could sustain themselves for an entire year independently. So they had to tote 2,000 pounds of gear. Food and other supplies, tents, furs, all kinds of supplies, 2,000 pounds on foot. Now there were sea routes, but they were pretty expensive. So most of the people went over the pass and were greatly aided again by local indigenous communities to tote this gear. You can imagine 2,000 pounds of gear. If you can even tote 100 pounds on your back, which is a lot, it's 20 trips. So they bring part, drop it off, bring part. So it kind of reminds me of like in the Himalayas, you know, in Everest. Now it's a huge tourist attraction, but it's the local Sherpas who are doing most of the work and bringing the gear up. So the large migration, about 100,000 people coming up to the Klondike region between 1896 and 1899, sparked by the discovery of gold in August of 1896. Word reaches San Francisco and Seattle, and there's a huge stampede of folks north. Some became wealthy, very tiny percentage. By the time most arrived, the gold was gone. A lot of it was rumor. Pretty difficult trip for very little return in most cases. So Skagway. Have you been to Skagway before? Yeah. Really interesting little town. I think you're really going to enjoy it. Gratefully, most of these towns, because they're not accessible by road, most of the towns we're going to hit are very small, actually, and very accessible. Even if mobility is challenging, there's so much you can do just in the local area there. Usually within 5 or 10 minutes of the ship, you can just take a nice little look around the town. And Skagway's really nice. There's a main boulevard that goes through the town, and to your right as you go through, you walk through about 4 or 5 blocks. To your right, you'll see some remnants of this era. So there's some log cabins there. There's a little bar that's very famous from this period, and other little huts. Also, on the north side of town, I think it would be north in this case, opposite side of town, about a 30-minute walk, or you can grab a lot of, there's also a local bus that goes up there, or I'm sure Shorex can help you out. There's a Gold Rush Cemetery that's really interesting, and the beginning of the Chilkoot Trail. So here's the cemetery. Took me about 30 minutes to walk up there. Very interesting, though, from this period. A lot of people who died at the end of the 1800s during that era. And this was the path. So right here, so we have Skagway just south of there is Haines, which we went to on the last cruise. Skagway is really beautiful right up here. And they would take this trail up here, Chilkoot Trail, up to the Klondike Gold Rush in the Yukon area, generally regarded to be at Dawson City as being the central point there. Got another one here, Klondike Gold Rush, named after the Klondike River nearby. And again, generally in this area right around Dawson City was the headquarters for this. Right there. And this is the Chilkoot Trail. So coming up from Skagway, again, people came all the way from Seattle and even far south is my hometown of San Francisco, coming north up to Skagway, taking the Chilkoot Trail over here through the mountain pass, through Dawson City. And take a look at this. So this is what it looked like, no easy feat again in the dead of winter. And these are some of the 100,000 people that made that perilous journey. This poor gentleman here. No easy trip to make, even with modern technology and modern clothes.